some of the most creative product managers or product leaders I have seen, they derive ideas from several sources, from movies, music. They don't have limits as such.
I think failure is part of, I have also run 2 different startups and tried different approaches.
Tell me one product you wish you were a founder of.
Usually a great product will originate in a great insight about customers or a great insight about the market.
I think most people don't know that. Much of marketing inspiration for Apple came from Nike.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Prasun. I am currently working in Razorpay. Been in different product roles since last 10 years now. Glad to be here at your podcast, Navneet.
Glad to have you here, Prasun, for the podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's always fun to be here at Airtribe and, to be in the company of so many interesting people. The kind of instructors I've met in the past, it's just amazing to learn from them and hear their interesting tales and learn from their experience. So thank you. It's a privilege.
I continue to learn from you. You are one of the instructors at Airtribe already. I'm pretty sure our audience is going to learn a lot from you and our conversation here. What is great product management according to you?
Greatness in anything, and especially with product management, is about greatness and leadership primarily. Usually a great product will originate in a great insight about customers or a great insight about the market. But for you to be able to execute that, because ideas alone will not be enough. For you to be able to execute it, for you to be able to get everyone rallied together and see through the entire execution, you need great leadership in place. So I have observed, as you look at leaders, and the leaders start exhibiting similar qualities across all functions, be it marketing, sales, product, technology. So it's as much as the craft, which is your user research and design, data analytics, product thinking, product sense, which we talk about, but also especially leadership. So you got to make sure that your vision is a vision which resonates with the entire org and is a vision you are able to execute and bring together in your product. I think that is what I would constitute as great product management and leadership in product management.
You bring an interesting point. I think it's probably why, even for aspiring PMs, when we talk about what are the key traits that they have to develop, one of the traits that we always talk about is leadership. And people who are very early, they are not very sure why leadership is required at such an early stage, for someone who is just becoming a PM. But based on what you are saying, I think because a PM has to rally the team around for a new product idea or a feature idea, it's very important for them to develop those leadership skills. I think it's a matter of time, before these PMs also develop it. But it also makes me wonder why some people say, if you really want to learn product management, go join a bigger company where there is a proper leadership, where there is a proper process around how to do product management. If once you have done that and you are feeling adventurous, you should probably consider joining an early stage company or start something of your own. But it's a question in our community all the time. And I have thought a lot about this. Why some people hesitate when it comes to joining an early stage company with the goal of learning product management.
So I think let's not confuse 2 different things, right? First is leadership. Anyone can be a leader. Somebody who's a child can be a leader. So there are enough examples of leaders. Even kids have been leaders in their right. And Greta is one example. We had Malala, Aaron Schwartz. So leadership is taking ownership, taking charge. It doesn't mean, so in the context which you just said, when you are looking at learning about product management and the advice which comes to early stage product managers around that join a company which has a lot of product managers around, that is an advice around how do you learn quickly product management. So one thing is leadership and another thing is the craft of product management. So obviously when you're around several product managers uh, who are at your level, senior, very senior, which usually would happen in a slightly bigger setup, you'd get to quickly learn because hopefully you'll get to see product management in action across different levels at different scale. And hence I will differentiate between what is leadership, how it is needed. And I believe I have seen in my team, for example, at Razorpay or at Gojek, leadership exhibited by the folks who've just joined right after their campus. And they would take charge of really important areas of business and product and really deliver as product managers end-to-end outcomes. And that is true leadership. Are they at the same time product managers who know all the aspects of different craft? Maybe not. And that is something they can quickly learn at a slightly bigger setup. Now, when it comes to startup, you definitely lean on more on your leadership and your passion to get things done by whatever it takes to get it done. And that essentially means that you need to focus more on that leadership and delivering results rather than maybe learning the craft. So as long as you can differentiate between in a bigger setup with more PMs, you will learn the craft faster versus in a startup, you get to exhibit leadership fairly quickly and early. Is that's the key difference, in my opinion.
Very interesting. One related question here. Do you think what you just described is related to this idea that, people who are early in their careers, they do not know what is not possible. If they have, ownership traits, they actually go ahead and execute it. They do not know what is not possible. So, they kind of hustle a little more and try different ways of, getting things done. And along the way, they learn.
I think in that sense, there's no difference between early founders who don't know what is not possible and they go ahead and execute everything.
Yes.
Even like, things which are assumed just not possible. So, yeah, I think you make a very solid point about, be it product managers, startup founders, leaders, or anyone else. When you're starting early and you think of no limits, truly there are no limits because these limits are of your own mind.
I can personally relate with it as a founder, at least, because even though there is a lot of hype and momentum around AI right now, in 2014-15 period, I think that there were not enough people talking about it. I used to do workshops, offline masterclasses, if you will, in Bangalore. I was kind of early, in machine learning, deep learning, and we built a system that worked really well, a system around recognizing images. Objects in those images, which was the foundation of my first startup. One thing I learned looking back, I didn't know what was not possible, but I wanted to solve a problem. And the problem was around accurately identifying different objects in the image. And I went ahead and used whatever algorithms were available then, came up with a system that worked. Over time, I have felt this is something which is very common, across startup founders or PMs. When they do not know what is not possible, they can just go all in, bold and confident, trying to solve a problem, and maybe they figure out something along the way.
Or maybe it's not a huge success or a hit, or maybe it's a failure. See, but what is important is the spirit of trying and believing that anything is possible. That is how you stretch the boundaries, right? So when you started, and we were both there together in the Bangalore startup ecosystem, used to meet for coffees. And at that time, obviously, the ecosystem was nowhere close to where it is today. I don't think anyone had heard about LLMs at that time or the advancement in NVIDIA graphics. And like the whole hardware side was also not really there and definitely not available to us from an Azure API or a Google Cloud API. So the whole ecosystem, the way it has matured now, something like that is entirely possible today. So I think failure is part of, I have also run 2 different startups and tried different approaches. The spirit of not knowing that what is not possible, the spirit of truly hitting for and going for something big and not really caring for if it's possible or not, is what I truly believe, take things forward. Takes startups forward, takes the entire ecosystems and countries forward. So I believe that is really necessary. And, sometimes I wish we can go back to that spirit, and, all the so-called experience and judgment we have built about, things which cannot be done, I think needs to be broken. And, time and again, that is what exactly has happened. So when we look at OpenAI, I think I had kind of given up on chatbots. If any of my like product managers would have come to me and said that, let's build a great chatbot support, I would have looked at with caution. I would have, asked to make sure that do we really have the capabilities? Can we do a lot of initial work to make sure that this is something which we can do? Now it's a commodity. Like now you can actually go copy paste all the content in one window, write in English few rules and guardrails in another window, hit a button and your chatbot is ready for you to integrate. Like these are the demos I'm getting to see right now, like last week. So it's very much possible today. So definitely not knowing what is possible is a great asset to have. And for folks who are starting early, to aim high is a great way of achieving big and making a difference.
I totally align with you on this one.
So it's very interesting, Navneet. We started talking with what is great product management. We almost talked between leadership, being a product manager, and what is great product management together. So you cannot talk about what is great product management without talking about leadership. And the same thing goes for even startups, or for that matter, any other function or craft. Greatness inherently requires leadership. Anything, be it being a CEO of a company or being a great product manager. But it's interesting. I wanted to ask you, what are some great products? And let's, for the sake of our conversation, let's maybe restrict to products which are software, like not hardwares. So what would you consider as some of the great internet software products?
I have a few personal favorites. There is one I'm going to talk about here before I move on to the popular ones. There is one product that I have been using for more than a decade now, which is called Pocket. It's a read it later service. And all it does is you are browsing the internet, you come across a good article, and you don't have time to read it right away. You just pocket it. There is an extension on Chrome, any other browser for that matter. You pocket it right there, and maybe late in the evening after your work is done, or over the weekend, whenever you get a chance, you go through a few of them. It's clutter free, no ads, no unnecessary element on the page. Like it's just formatted text, optimized for reading experience. Why I love this product is because two reasons. First, I love learning, and I like to be aware of all that is happening in the world of tech. But most importantly, because it does its primary job really, really well.
Exactly. So in this example, it takes great leadership to stay true to those ethos of, being user-centric. And it's very difficult to do that. How do you make money while not having ads, like you said, stripping away all the ads and, bringing out all the content in a very reader-friendly manner? It takes great leadership to be able to consistently stay true to those decisions. Because over the long term, you do need to have a business model to be able to survive for a longer term. A true leader would stay true to these principles and would still be able to figure out a way to sustain the business. And that is where I think in a lot of ways we see eventually leaders giving up. Like one of my personal examples of great leaders not taking a great decision in this current environment would be companies like Google and Microsoft laying off people, like 10,000, 20,000 people, despite having tens of billions of dollars in their quarterly filings, as their profits. That stumps me. Of course, you have to look at your shareholders and you have to maximize the shareholder value. But you were the one who hired like crazy just a few years back, and you are the one now laying off people. And honestly, just saying that I take total responsibility and accountability just doesn't cut it for me. So, yeah, I don't know. Where were we? We were talking about leadership and great products. So, yeah, it's a difficult thing, right? As you just saw, how long Pocket can survive without having ads. And that is where, true leadership is required. You need to be able to execute, to stay true to your mission and vision and values while still surviving.
I have something to say here when it comes to products and their future. A few years into a company, most founders realize what's going to be the ultimate opportunity for their products, uh, how large the market is going to be like. When I think of something like Pocket, a few years back, they sold it to Mozilla, and they are no longer an independent company because they probably realized it's a good niche product, and there are a few users out there, like people like me. Maybe they have a few million users, but it cannot be a company with a billion users. And they tried to monetize with something like subscription. I'm one of the customers, and I'm fine with paying them every month for such a nice, reliable service that they give to me. But it's probably not something that can be a venture scale company. That's the unfortunate truth about building products. There's one more example I want to give, actually, something that is close to my heart.
Yeah, before you move to another product example, there's something very interesting for us to deep dive. Is the objective of a startup to be venture scale? And if I translate that into product management parlance, is the objective of being a product manager to earn more money? If you look at that, it becomes really difficult to justify why you are a founder or why you are a product manager. Because let's say tomorrow maybe there is some other job profile which becomes super important and you can make tons of money. Let's say a YouTube content influencer, like something like that. Would you change jobs quickly if it's something you can do? If you can do product management as well as YouTube content creator, would you just change it because you're gonna make more money? So I find that as it's an objective metric. Money is an objective metric, but that metric is not the goal. If I go back to one of Steve Jobs, I think all of us love, and if you go back to his the famous Stanford speech, I think he talks about, despite the public failure of being expelled out of Apple, he talks about realizing I still love what I do and going back to do the same thing, despite doesn't matter if there's money in it or not. And I don't think Next was that much of a big success as a standalone product or a brand or a company, and just got acquired by Apple again. Sure, it would have become part of some other product, but doesn't have any existence today. So I think there's a lesson to be learned here, which is if you stay true to the problem you're trying to solve or the thing which you love, I think rest of the things can follow.
That makes sense. I just feel the world we are living in, there is always this constant noise, the constant pressure on everyone to figure it out as fast as they can, to build a huge company as fast as they can, irrespective of whether the products are actually optimized to serve the customers well.
And same thing
not
goes
just
for product managers. They are also in this race constantly to have a big paycheck, have a big impact in terms of numbers of their product, a lot of customers acquired, a lot of revenue made. And these so-called metrics sometimes can completely cloud your judgment. There is obviously a lot of noise. Every month there would be a review of your products and how you're doing on these metrics and how the revenue is. Or every month you would have a review with your board in terms of how the startup is doing. But we have to remember that what our goal is, what is that we are passionate about. And that is where I think great leadership comes into play in terms of distinguishing between this is a metric but it is different from the goal. And it's okay to, take a step back and question those metrics. Is this the right metric for me to chase? And the sooner you realize this, in fact, most of the PMs I love working with, I enjoy working with, and I kind of feel a lot of confidence giving them bigger problems and challenges is people who are there for the craft, people who show strong passion and energy. And a lot of times people do it because they are very competitive. They don't want to, anything they take up, they want to give their best shot to it and do a great job at it. But if whenever you see the mixture of people who are passionate and people who love what they're working on, you see greatness coming out.
I think we are getting a little philosophical here,
Yeah, who doesn't love philosophy?
Yeah, being true to yourself, doing what you are really passionate about, sometimes not over optimizing for metrics. I can give an example here, by the way. If I only look at metrics at Airtribe, what we are doing, like at Airtribe, we are trying to build learning experiences, which helps our, community reach the outcomes.
Learning experiences and the community experiences. I think some of the motivation for me to participate is to be around interesting people who are doing interesting things. The kind of instructors you have, like Ben in design, someone I really enjoyed working with in the past, and a lot of other folks you have. So both learning as well as networking, I think for me are like great pull towards environments like Airtribe.
Yeah. So I was just saying, yesterday, Airtribe had its third meetup of the year. Many of the community members I talked to yesterday, they were talking about their experience with the course. They were talking about the experience with the community, an opportunity to meet the founders, mentors, instructors in a meetup like this, and how useful it was for them to meet and connect with all of them and, unlock opportunities. Those things are very hard for me to define in terms of metrics.
Exactly. I think you've just talked about something which for me connected back with the most inspiring moments of my product management career. And those were customer conversations during research or feedback sessions, and really seeing customer needs and problems and getting that insight or seeing it being solved by the product you built. And those moments for me, still carry the torch whenever, it gets too dark or I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to say, working for, paycheck to paycheck. But if you love the craft and if you continue to get those moments, those for me, compensate for anything and everything else. And it's very difficult to put that into any kind of metric or perspective. So when a student comes to you and says that how much the experience transformed them or how much they enjoyed it, it's very difficult to put it into any kind of metric.
Yeah. So to summarize, I would say it's a combination of metrics and stories. Stories are as important as metrics. At Airtribe, we do look at the key metrics to know, how we are doing, how the learners are doing. But it's the stories that we focus a lot more on, particularly because, we as a company are very experience centric. I can give you one more anecdote here. In one of our meetups, I saw a few learners connected with a mentor. And long after the meetup was over, they kept meeting again and again. They created a WhatsApp group at that meetup, and they kept meeting again and again to, exchange notes, get ideas from the mentor, how to navigate their careers and all. The mentor was going over and above their commitment to Airtribe to help the learners. That happened because I think at the meetup, we enabled such conversations, such connections, and it stayed with the people.
It's a very difficult place to be in, right? Don't you think it's a conflict between how do you continue to make difference in individual lives? Like, you can't feed yourself and your team on stories.
Yeah.
So the metric pressure will continue to come in.
But stories
Can feed the soul.
Yeah. You remember that that conversation that we had? You came to my home a few months back, and we randomly talked about two brands. I showed you one of my most recent sneakers from Adidas, which is technically very, very advanced. And you told me one thing, Navneet, Adidas sells technology, Nike sells stories. That stayed with me. That stayed with me because Nike is at least 6 to 7 times as big as Adidas. And I very strongly feel Adidas probably has better sneakers, much more technically advanced sneakers. But Nike is what moves people. And now that we're talking about greatness, there is an amazing commercial by Nike on what is greatness. You should see it on YouTube. It's one of the most memorable, one of the most well made commercials ever made. It's more like a campaign, but it focuses on anyone can be great. And I think Nike is one of those companies which understands not just products, but also the stories behind those products. There is a reason that Steve Jobs and Apple took so much inspiration from Nike for their branding, for their marketing. I think most people don't know that much of marketing inspiration for Apple came from Nike.
Sure. And let's contrast it with some other campaign, like, marketing campaign, which also works for the brand. Amul. Every day or every week, Amul comes up with this new illustration, which is something, a very topical topic, and integrates its brand into that current affair.
So they do it very, very seamlessly.
They do it extremely seamlessly, and they remain, let's say, they maintain their brand recall and awareness, and they are the biggest brand, like butter brand, since Amul is focused on butter and dairy in the country. But I don't think we will say that it moves anyone. And that is something which will eventually, strictly talking in terms of metrics, would surface itself in terms of how much price you can demand from your customer. So it's interesting because I subscribe to Akshay Kalpa, which, brands themselves as organic milk, and the price they are able to demand from me as a customer is way more than, what Amul is able to charge. And that's the difference a story makes. But, I wanted to use these examples as an example of a day-to-day general product or a marketing campaign, and, vis-a-vis greatness like Apple or Nike.
I think it is super important for our community, for anyone who is interested, to work in technology, to work in the field of product management, where it's all about building products. This should not be constrained to thinking only about software products, because you can get a lot of inspiration from adjacent products or any day-to-day use product, like the one you talked about, like the bottle that I use, like the water bottle that I use, or the motorcycle or the sneaker, or even TV, whatever. So you can actually derive inspiration from any of those products, and it actually opens up your mind. Some of the most creative product managers or product leaders I have seen, they derive ideas from several sources. It can be from any of these categories. It can be from movies, music. They don't have limits as such. But the ones who are very new, sometimes they limit their focus to software products
I agree. See, inspiration can come from anywhere. I wanted to narrow down our focus and talk about like software products. But you're right. We could basically talk about any product, but like I believe software opportunities today are way more, and so hence I thought it would be interesting to limit the have a canvas of just software products to talk about. But yes.
So Prasun, before I talk about my second favorite product, I had a question. The question is, tell me one product you wish you were a founder of or the creator of.
Airbnb.
Okay. Why?
I love the product. I love the experience. I love the idea. Like, I just went to Austria last month. Thanks to Airbnb, I was able to stay in a remote village on a farmhouse in Austria, and it was just an amazing experience. It's unthinkable for me how I would have, been able to access that kind of a space in a world where there was no Airbnb. And there's something about the product which I feel is like, everything is designed well. I won't say that everything is efficient, but everything feels human. It feels that, they've built it for people like us, human beings, and the product just works for me. Obviously, like, search doesn't work for me. Their search is still like bizarre, but the overall idea is just inspiring. The overall company, it feels good. And the final outcome when you're traveling and when you stay at these great places, it's really great. Not to say that, some of the impact it has had on areas in terms of moving out locals, because, every house is converted into like this so-called hotel. That's a concerning area, but I guess the company can, hopefully the leadership of Airbnb can still kind of take that as a problem statement and solve for it.
Yeah, Airbnb is definitely one of my favorite products too. When I used to live in the US, maybe I never had as much money as you, to live in a farmhouse.
That's the difference between a good product manager and a founder.
Yeah,
More money in the short term.
can be a good founder, but still not make much money
Exactly.
for the longest time. So I never got a chance to live on a farmhouse, but I did go to some of my favorite places. Whether it's San Francisco or New York, I used to live in different places in Airbnb because I didn't have a permanent place, and because of Airbnb, I had a lot of flexibility. I remember going to Brooklyn because I wanted to learn more about the culture in Brooklyn. Brooklyn in New York is one of those areas which is, at the intersection of arts and technology. It's a melting pot of different cuisines, different cultures coming together. And for me, it was very cheap because I could book an Airbnb costing me $100 a night, perhaps. So I totally understand the value, but it's not my second favorite product, by the way. The way I look at products, it's a little different. The question that I asked you, the product that you wish you were a creator of. In my case, I have a special place in my heart for products that bring joy.
Jiffy.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just makes all conversations a lot more fun. There are times when I literally don't reply to people's messages by a message. I just reply with a GIF, using Jiffy. And it's a very, very popular product now.